Buck, we expect him to be here, don't we? Commissioner Rooney,
He will not be
he
here.
will not be here.
Yeah.
Commissioner Holden,
I am here.
you are here. Commissioner Goodson,
Here.
Commissioner Swenson is not here,
Won't make it.
and Commissioner Evans and Talcott are present. So, please put that in the minutes as to those that are here, and we'll expect Michael, like we said, so we'll, hopefully he'll show up. And in the meantime, would everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There, that should have been removed. Skip it.
That's why. That was a mistake. So we'll move beyond swearing in somebody, because there isn't, this is 1 year where we don't have any terms coming up.
We don't.
So, one of those odd years, you would have thought that we would have. So that's good. We have the same board ready to go back to work. Happy New Year, everybody. We have the consent
Okay.
agenda. The consent is the next item on the agenda. Consent agenda A is made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have a significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion or vote by any board member, and one item has been removed. Consent agenda A consists of the approval of board meeting minutes from November 24th, 2015. Payroll checks totaling from November, $71,789.19, and December's payroll checks of $74,709.82. Maintenance and operation checks from November totaling $135,686.81. December totaling $1,499,838.13. Fourth item on the consent agenda is approval of the passenger facility charge totaling $59,000 for November and $56,000 for December. Also included for approval, the consent agenda is the financial reports for November and December. Anybody have any comments or corrections? No items? If not, the chair will.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda A as presented.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It has been approved. So we've got consent agenda B, and for that I am recusing myself. So okay, but you.
Yes. There's a single item on consent agenda B this meeting. It is a maintenance and operations check made payable to Talcott Construction, number 21942, totaling $32,023.18. I can vouch for that check because I signed it myself. So that is the sole item on consent agenda B for your consideration. Questions?
I do have a question.
Okay.
Have we not mailed the check?
4 people?
I think
If you've already signed it, isn't that the horse in front of the cart? I'm just curious.
Well, they all are technically. It's the check register that we're approving.
Approving? Oh, okay, so I'm naive.
As
Thank you.
long as they're budgeted expenses, I'm authorized to spend it, but we still want to put the checks out there as actual payments, so that the public has a chance to see what we pay for.
Okay, thank you. I move that we accept consent agenda B.
Second?
Oh, second. I'm not positive we
I
can.
think you can with one
I'll look it
standing
up
member.
and make sure,
Yeah.
because we,
The question on the floor is we only have 3 voting members. We have a quorum of 4.
I'm
but if-
abstaining, otherwise we could.
yeah, but I think with an abstention, the quorum is still valid.
I believe that's correct.
And one person's just voting abstention.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well, for Robert's rules.
I think so.
So, I'm sorry, we have a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. At this point, that we accept the single item and consent agenda B as presented. Any further comments, questions? So, just to clarify, we'll go ahead and vote, and if there's a subsequent issue on this, we'll bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, passed.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the director's report for as long as his voice may last.
Yeah, really exciting stuff this month. You probably saw in the weekly reports, we had a record fourth quarter. We employed about 1,700 more passengers than we did the previous year. We've been positive for 4 months in a row, going back to September. And in that period, we've added over 2,000 additional boardings. So that's a real, I think, great takeaway from our marketing campaign in Canada last fall. Despite the decline in the dollar, we're still able to attract significant numbers of Canadians through. We saw that throughout the holidays, fairly consistent Canadian flows. This time of year, as we get towards the end of January and through April, is our peak Canadian season. So we have a campaign underway right now, which we'll show you in a minute. But we think it'll be a good time of year to see how much the difference in the dollar is hurting us. The good news is our fares have fallen so much, and then on top of that, we've opened the Value Park, which provides a discounted parking option. I think the savings is still a significant factor. And I was up there visiting with our ad agency a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and they said the same thing. It's still very compelling given the savings. And as many of you know, the Canadians often they have no choice but to vacation while they go overseas. But they have no beaches, they have no Los Angeles, they have no. There's nothing like that. So really, it's
Nothing
still
warm.
Yeah, it's still a very compelling draw for them to travel inside the U.S. on their vacations. So I think for the time being, we'll continue to hammer away at that market because we're seeing really good success there. Also, in front of you, I gave you a packet that looks like this. The first couple of pages, this is our continuing discussion on board training opportunities. The first 3 pages are the National AAAE Conference, which is the Airport Association of Airport Executives, American Association of Airport Executives. This is their national conference. It would be held in May this year in Houston. And you can see on Sunday of the conference, there is they've reduced it now down to where it's just a 1:30 to 2:30 session for board members, but there is board curriculum. And as I said last year, spending 2 or 3 days at this conference is by far the best crash course in airports in general. If anyone would want to go, we would just go to the general sessions after the board session and probably split up and attend some of those. But there's topics, everything from aviation security, revenue development, leasing procedures, regulatory authority. It's all covered in this 3-day period. And the majority of the airports in the U.S. would be represented at this conference through some of their staff. So it's a great opportunity. It's the whirlwind 3-4 days of airports. It only occurs once a year. The second set of papers in here, the last 2 pages, are the Northwest chapter of AAAE. They have their own conference, which will be this year in August and September. It's at Big Sky this year, so it's local. This will have far less general airport discussion. There'll be probably some seminars on snow removal. It tends to be a big topic. Things specific to our ADO about funding, when the funding was coming and what they think. A lot less of a breadth of subject matter, but it is close. So you have a couple of months, obviously, to consider both of these, but if anyone is interested, we'd probably want to try to get airfares and hotel reservations lined up I'd say at least in March for the national conference. It's a really good conference. I have to admit, I think it's probably the best opportunity if you're newer to airports to really see the breadth of the industry. Setting that aside, we have we're still working on Chicago service. You may recall we received a grant last fall from the SCASD program, Small Community Air Source Development Grant, and we continue to have discussions with interested airlines. Stay tuned. Obviously, we're coming to the end of the time of the year where you would award such flights and load them. So we think the next couple of weeks would be critical if we're going to get that service to happen. So we'll be in contact with you if anything breaks. We'll be right on top of it with an announcement and getting the marketing plan pulled together. I had some discussions just this week with the FAA regarding our engineering contract. You may remember last fall, we initially had planned to RFP the contract in the fall. We have a committee assigned for that. But at the Helena conference, the local ADO conference, they told us that their new plan is to make sure that the master plans are out there for a few months before we run a selection. So that kind of threw a loop in things because our master plan will be completed in March. As it stands right now, we don't have much, if any, work in 2017 because we're pulling all of our 2-year resources into the program this year. And there might be some leak over in the project if things don't get done into the 17 cycle, or if the federal grants aren't large enough, a portion of that contract would drift into 17, but it will be the same work that's already designed. So I talked to the FAA this week, and what they are going to allow us to do is to go ahead and extend that contract to complete the runway work and then do the selection in 17 and start fresh with 18. I had objected to starting in 17 with a selection because the engineer would come in and lose an entire year of a 5-year contract with no work. And I just didn't think that was fair to anybody to do that. So they've agreed and said that we can go ahead and compete in 17 and have a fresh engineering contract for the 18 cycle, which is the next construction period after the runway program. Excuse me. Hope I can hold this together. I did want to present a little bit of our marketing plan that we've got rolling right now up in Canada to give you kind of a flavor of what's going on. We're seeing just terrific response from these, the programs we've been doing. And, we got turned on. These are some of the Alberta print ads. These run in the newspaper, both in Calgary and mostly in Lethbridge, some in Medicine Hat also. Really attractive ad design, price point. We really have found that price point marketing is the key to getting results back from that market. Here we've got some additional ones you can see, all the way down to $98 round trip. Really compelling airfares. And so as the airfares have come down, even though that exchange rate has come down at the same time, it's still a much better deal than what they can find elsewhere. Here's some of our Google AdWords. You can see this one. It's hard to say. It's hard to see it, but this is on an ad that would pop up on a Canadian website on your smartphone, on your computer if you're browsing around. It's I forget what the name of it is. It's the
Kayak?
No, that's on. It's on some type of political blog. It's a funny name.
Democrats.
What is it?
Occupy Democrats.
Occupy Democrats. Yeah. So I'm not sure why they picked that particular web page for the ad to come up on, but they come up randomly, from your phone. So a great example of how those ads present themselves on the mobile devices. We use a lot of that in Calgary also in Lethbridge. These are our Twitter promotions. We've just got into Twitter. You can see Vivian's been putting these together, and I think she's just doing an exceptional job. These are really attractive ads, and they get great response back. These are the Twitter ones. We also have them on Facebook. Some more newspaper ads. We have been putting in some city ads too, in addition to the beaches. Las Vegas really isn't the beach. We're having a hard time figuring out how to present that one. But the idea of warm is what we're trying to convey there. But we've got quite a few of these ads that have been running up there. We were able to buy a product where we get the boxes that are unsold every week. So they guarantee us 25 ads a week, but we're getting up to 40 ads a week. So it's kind of a nice product because they can have this artwork ready and just insert them as the ads places open up. So we're really blanketing the paper up there right now quite nicely.
And that's in Lethbridge?
Those are Lethbridge ads, yep.
And
Yeah.
Calgary.
And yeah, there are some Calgary ones in there too, but the ad package we bought's in Lethbridge. These are our Facebook posts, and it's hard to see, but there's thousands of comments back on those. I think that one there is 28,000 or something. What's is it? Do you remember, Vivian?
There's 36,000 on the left and
Yeah.
28,000 on the right.
I mean, we're just reaching thousands and thousands of people with these ads. If you go through the comments, they're just terrific comments. People are sending it to their friends saying, let's go. You know, I'd love to go there. You know, they're really constructive, positive feedback type of ads. And like I said, Vivian's been putting most of these together, and she's just doing a great job. I think that they're nice looking, and the verbiage on them is great, and we're seeing great response back. And then we bought some movie mill ads, so as you're sitting before the movie up in Lethbridge right now, you might be introduced to one of these ads. You can see our Canadian URL that our ad agency bought for us up there. We figure there's a good number of people that forget to put .com in because everything up there, even Google, is .ca. So we bought up that URL so that we get the people. And then we just started advertising on it. And it helps us because we can see who's coming to us from our native ads as opposed to the people that already knew us or have come to us before. And so we can really monitor what the new ads are doing. The other thing I was going to show you, hey Vivian, will you put that video? We're buying some digital billboards right now in Lethbridge. Our ad agency is partially owned by the company that owns these billboards, and so we're able to run ads on them. They do all the artwork for us, and I think they really come out nicely. There's about 5 billboards around Lethbridge on all the major thoroughfares. I went around and toured them all a couple weeks ago. You can kind of see what other people are doing there with that ad. A little bit of motion in these ads as possible. Big pieces of meat look good. And then the next one's our ad. Got some clouds flying behind there. Really eye-catching, nice big dollar numbers. Really nice ads. It lets us put 3 or 4 price points out there at the same time and give them each their individual space. I'm really excited about that product. It's done really well for us. It's funny, the ads on the weekend, people see them, and then when they come back to work, Monday and Tuesdays are our spike. It's like, either on the way to work they're seeing them, or over the weekend they saw them, and when they finally get in front of the computer, you can see the spike of visitors to our website coming back to check out those airfares. So I think the campaign, again, I'm pretty happy with what we're putting out up there. I think we have a compelling product, and I'm excited by the number of folks that we're attracting with this. We just got our 10,000th friend on Facebook now, so I can tell you that's actually more than Cleveland Hopkins, much bigger airport than us. So we're doing really well, I think, on the social front, reaching out and getting people to see our messages.
So do the Canadians have any better chance of actually purchasing a ticket for that price than we do? I mean, you see those advertised, but when you go to book them.
Flexible dates.
Yeah.
Flexible
She
dates.
uses the
All flexible
Yeah,
days?
these are right
Gotta
off
be
of
flexible.
Orbitz, and she shops them every week right off of Orbitz. And you can get them. I mean,
You can't get them, you just have to fly when they want you to fly.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
They're only
Tuesdays and
here to go up.
Saturdays are the key
Tuesdays and
days.
Saturdays?
Tuesdays and Saturdays. But I mean, just by way of example, I couldn't travel Tuesday and Saturday, and I just booked Atlanta in June, and I think I paid an average for 4 tickets of $4.50 a ticket.
Wow.
That's pretty good to go to the other coast and south in the coast too. Into a Fortress hub. I think it's a good airfare, and I'm on United because they're competing in that hub space. I hear, in fact, you guys might even have stories, but throughout the whole community, I keep hearing these stories. I booked Maui for $350 round trip. I mean, there's a lot of people getting these lower airfares. I hear it pretty regularly, especially LA. I mean, LA is really, it's rarely above $250 now. I mean, it's just a solid $200 ticket just about any time you want to fly it.
Who wants to go to LA?
No, it's for them coming here and returning. There.
Would you hold up that Excel sheet? Thanks. Then the next thing I have for you, I'll pass around here. We'll be talking about a major capital funding plan today. The majority of our 2017 program is on the agenda. And as we've been saying for last year, it is going to be a major spend for us, probably our biggest spend since taxiway A or maybe even the runway over the next couple of years. And so what I've put together here is, the projector's off.
I put it down, but it's warming back up.
I'm warming back up. So what this is it's a capital funding plan that shows kind of our reserves where we are today. The operating costs, the expenses and revenues are they're offset by the passenger airline rates. So they're covered every year by the rate structure and the revenues that we have. So really what we have to concern ourselves with as it relates to capital spending is our reserve balance and the time it takes us to recover the costs of improvements that we're buying. And so what you can see here is we ended the year at about $3.4 million worth of reserves balance. We have a couple of things that are going to flow into us this spring, the sale of the upper shop. We've got some PFC collections yet this fiscal year to do. And then we've got some remaining cost of snow removal equipment from the rig we bought this year, and next year we'll be recovering those costs. So we expect to end the year right around $3.8 million. And as you can see, next year we're buying major program components. We've got the runway in there. It's going to be over 2 fiscal years, about $1.1 million in in PFC share that we're going to put out there. We'll recover that PFC over about 5 years because our passenger facility charge flows in every year at about $750,000 or a little higher than that. But we have debt service from the 08 remodel many years ago that we're still paying off. And that eats up a good portion of the PFC. So you can see we're flowing PFCs in at about $250 per year, which is the excess that we have left coming into our PFC collections. That will repay us for the PFC portion of the runway. We also have an ineligible portion of $1.1 million from the item in your agenda there. And so that gives us, over 2 years, we'll be putting $1.1 million into that program. That will be recouped from the airlines over a 10-year period as we charge them for that cost. And then we have 3 other projects that we're hoping to do with the major pavement buy. Hopefully we'll get good asphalt prices. We want to build GA taxi lanes, we want to build a lift station, and we want to pave the SRE lot. Of course, all of those would depend on good asphalt pricing. If we have bad pricing, we wouldn't likely pursue those. But as you can see, we're going to flirt right with that $2 million reserve balance, which is the informal target that we've kind of set in previous board meetings. There's a possibility that we might want to do some liquidity borrowing next year, just if nothing else, just a line of credit maybe. I frankly don't think if we drop down to $1.8 million, I don't think it's the end of the world. It's a healthy reserve. We'll be recovering that money back. But the next thing I was going to mention on this is the engineers, as I said in the item that we have here on the agenda. There's a couple of engineering changes to that program that look like they're going to come down the pipe. And I just spoke to our engineer before our meeting, and he says the FAA has approved using the new pavement design software for our program. It'll be adopted later this year, but it's been published already by the FAA. And all it does is it takes in the number of aircraft operations and the weight of the aircraft, and it tells you what your pavement section is. The FAA's new standard is going to lighten that pavement section. Still get a 20-year life, but what they're seeing is the previous section is more than what you needed. So with that lightening, it looks like it's going to strip quite a bit out of the cost of this project, several $1 million. And so we think it's likely that our local share of an eligible project cost is going to come down somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000, which means these numbers starting in 2017 will be about $300,000 higher, which is really good news because that gives us quite a nice cushion in there for the project costs. The PFC will come down some, but not much, because remember that's only a 10% match on the entire project cost. So if the project cost comes down to $1 million, we only save 10%. So the good news is I think this is kind of the worst case scenario. We've got a couple of discretionary projects we can pull when we get our bids this year, and then we also anticipate that we'll get a much lower project cost than what we have in today's agenda. And those new numbers that, I got some preliminary numbers that I just discussed now. The engineers are working on new design estimates. So hopefully at the February meeting, we'll have an updated budget that will reflect those new savings. But that, I think that's very good news. The bottom line on this is I think we can accomplish a capital program without borrowing with this major runway project over the next couple of years. I think we can accomplish it without borrowing. If we do need to borrow, I think it'd be in the 18 cycle. We might want to get some liquidity, a couple $100,000, $300,000-$400,000, maybe through an additional line of credit from a bank or something like that. It still remains a very competitive lending environment. I don't think we necessarily have to do that. And like I said, when we see the bids, we can decide if we want to pursue things like the GA lift station. Maybe now just isn't the time. But I think it would be a great piece of infrastructure to get in place to help us develop down there. So I did want to present that just so we've got an idea how the capital program is going to impact our reserves over the next couple of years.
Okay.
Are you done okay now?
Yes.
Any questions of anything John just covered? Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And I was looking forward to this moment, but we're short a couple of board members, and whatever you want to do, but it makes it a little bit harder without 3 board members here to.
In the past, when we've been short at this meeting, we've deferred it to the next month, and I think that's probably the best. I tried to reach out to Dan this week, and I couldn't even get a hold of him, just to remind him of because the elections were this week, and I haven't talked to Mike either. I don't know if anyone else has. He might be working too. But, yeah, it's my recommendation would be we just defer to February.
Right now, we're a little weak on volunteers.
I'm a big proponent of the status quo.
Well, I suggest you make it to the next meeting, because you might get elected, you might be.
Yeah, that
So-
has happened once before.
You've got another month to reconsider.
Okay.
So with that, I think it does make sense without 3 board members to postpone the election of the new officers. Okay, next item on the agenda would be the assignment of the
And for full disclosure, I'll have Laura present this. The contact that's being listed for the new company is a personal friend, and I can't recommend either way because I have a conflict. So I'll let Laura handle that discussion.
So this is just a standard assignment. Davidson approached us and they want to sell their hangar and to Venture Property and Leasing, LLC. Per their contract, they're able to do that. And in the past, it's a private hangar, so in the past, we brought the assignment to the board to make that decision. They entered into a contract May 1st, 2004 for a 20-year contract and then a 10-year option. So this would run through 2034, brings in about $1,500 a year right now based on the 12 cents per square foot. And this would continue, everything in the contract moves over to Venture Property and will move forward just the same as if Davidson was down there leasing it. So we would recommend assigning this to the Venture Property and Leasing. Questions?
There's no reason in your mind
No.
why not to do this?
It's just a formality then, because legally we wouldn't have any reason to.
The only reason, and this is very typical for airport boards, if the new owner was not an aviation-related company,
Right.
it was a moving company that wanted that had some stuff in there, the FAA likes us to review these, and so the new owner does own an airplane, and they are engaged in aviation.
Okay. So, question?
Well, I was I assume Venture has filled out an application and put forth, documentation that they're a viable entity with appropriate finances to support the commitment they're making?
They're purchasing the hangar from Davidson, and so with the private hangars, we have not gotten that deep into anybody's financial status.
The only thing at risk for us is the land, the $1,500 per year. And should they default on the lease, the improvements ultimately revert to us. So, in a way, we're almost better off if they default, because then we could lease a hangar instead of the land. But, in that default, we would likely be in the soup with their financer, so it would take some time to iron out. But yeah, I would, I would say they're very much a going concern.
Okay.
So the recommendation of staff is to approve the assignment of the lease. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
It's been moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of staff to approve the assignment of the Davidson hangar. Any questions or comments? Okay.
I'm sorry, who was your conflict with that?
Dustin Thompson.
Dustin Tom, okay.
Okay. Okay, without any further questions, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We accept the recommendation of staff. Okay, it looks like we've got a grazing lease.
Big money, big money.
Oh, that's bad. So back in the September work session, we talked about putting a grazing lease RFP out. We have the kind of the side of the hill here, and that's where the horses are. And then down below, there's a 6-acre parcel where the llamas used to be, if you remember. And that's actually in a floodplain down there, so there's not a lot that can be built.
Oh, so it's not?
That's right, yeah, right off the.
It actually flooded really badly
Yeah.
when we had the water 2 years ago. The poor little llamas were standing on every high spot they could find.
So we put it out as two separate, one RFP, but as two separate properties. And we got a lot of interest. I was actually pretty excited. I thought that we were going to have a little competition with it, but it ended up that only one person came back with a response. And it was Prinzing, who has the lease for the horses to begin with, which that's a 64-acre parcel. And he went ahead and he bid for both of them. So it is an increase from what we were being paid. The 64-acre, we are currently getting $880, and he's going to bump it up to $1,318 annually. And the 6-acre parcel, we were getting $62 on annually, and that's going to be bumped up to
Over 235?
35?
yeah. Now, that is in line for grazing. So if we were going to do something different with it on the side of the hill, we could get more money for it. But for grazing and all of that technical jargon with how many horses are in there and all of that, this is in line with it. So Mr. Prinzing has been a good tenant. He's required to take care of the fences, keep those as they should be, and weed control. We kind of share it a little bit. County's got some, we do some, horses do some. It's kind of a joint thing, but we haven't had any problems with him. He pays on time, and so we would recommend moving forward and awarding both parcels to Prinzing, and it would be a 5-year lease with a 5-year option.
Okay. Is there any questions concerning the leases? Okay, the chair would entertain a motion. The recommendation is to approve both leases for a 5-year term with a 5-year option for $1,318 and $135 respectively.
I move. So.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. There's no further discussion. Take the vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously.
Wish we could double all the revenues like that.
Yeah.
Times zero is still zero.
Okay, now we're on to the lift station again. Back to the lift station.
Yeah, and this is our first capital project for this year that we've got in the packet. It's the GA lift station. As you may recall, we've been working for several years to get utilities down to the private hangar area at the south end of the airfield. The SRE building allowed us to drag a gravity sewer line all the way down to the road that serves Front Range Aviation and the private tenants down there. And we also got three-phase electric and water. And actually, we extended the water line during that project all the way down to right next to the Davidson hangar. So we're set to go, except for we've got that 400-foot force main and a lift station that we need in order to get the flows back up the hill to the gravity pipe. This project would install that infrastructure. We put in the lift station at the bottom of the hill there near the new GA expansion area, about 20-acre parcel. It was leveled out for the runway about 10 years ago. And then the Red Horse construction, which is later on the agenda, would construct taxi lanes into that area. Once we have the sewer in place, the lift station in place, there's an existing gravity sewer line under the road that goes back to many of the GA hangars, the private hangars. So we can actually flow that into the lift station and hook many of those private hangars that exist today up, including the Davidson hangar, including the Front Range Aviation, and many other private hangars in there. Once we have sewer in place, we're allowed to put in a water line, and that'll allow us to hook all these guys up with sewer and water. So it's a major investment in that area down there that we think will pay off in many years ahead. We're out in front of it, no doubt. It'll take us many years to recover this cost and through the development of that land. But providing that aviation land and creating some new hangar pads, I think is well worth it and very much fitting with our role as the airport authority. So we would recommend, it says on the agenda design, this is actually designing and construction of a new lift station down there. We would recommend $200,000 budget to design and construct a lift station. Again, as the runway budget comes to fruition and we see bids in March, that would give us time to decide whether or not to proceed with this project. But either way, we would at least have a design on the shelf for a lift station down in that area.
Any questions from John on this project?
John, what was the anticipated recovery time, like 20 and 30 years?
Yeah, I think what we plan to do is to charge each tenant an additional, that wants to hook up to an additional 5 cents on their ground rent, which brings them up to 17 cents. And I think we're looking at that 15-year kind of payback period in order to recover that cost. And what we don't know yet is what role the city might play in some of that infrastructure. I can tell you in Colorado Springs you didn't get any help, and I don't know what the process has been with the city here in Great Falls in terms of cost sharing, if they would do it.
I wouldn't expect a lot.
I wouldn't expect much either.
Any other questions?
How do we come up with the 5 cent?
5 cents.
Yes.
It lets us recover that cost of the lift station over a 15-year period or so. And we don't want to get it too high because we want to continue to develop additional hangars. We'll never recover it if we just stay with what we have. But we want to encourage development through a reasonable rate. 17 cents brings us right in line with some of the other state airports. Bozeman's right in that neighborhood. Billings, we don't really want to get much above, some of those guys. Even though the airplanes aren't really that fungible, I think much higher than that, it will begin to dissuade some hangar development. I don't know, Jan, what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing when it comes to development is cost. And how do the numbers work? Especially if you're going to go in and put something up, and Roxanne, you can jump in too, but when you put something in and you're going to lease it out, there's gotta be that rate of return before you even throw the first shovel, you know, so.
And unfortunately, the steel building costs just haven't come down at all.
No, they haven't.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, who knows what'll happen, but, you know, cost is the biggest thing, you know. And the other thing is too, is the financial institutions, if you're gonna use borrowed capital, they'll look at the lease rates, and they will go out and they will compare lease rates for, you know, plain ground at, you know, well, in Billings it's this, and Bozeman's it's this, and Missoula it's this, and then Butte and Helen it's this. So they'll say, yeah, your lease rates are, yeah, you know, so I agree with John that 5 cents is, you know, it's not unrealistic.
Any other comments?
Is that just for new development, is 5 cents, or anybody?
Whoever
that
wants to
taps
hook
into
onto it, yeah,
Whoever
we've got a
taps.
few of those private hangars we'll be able to stub out, so they can actually hook onto it, immediately after we build it. But, if you're an existing building and you want to use it, we would want to charge that additional cost to recover it.
I think you mentioned this, John, the 200,000 is consistent with what's carried through in all the budget.
Yeah, on the spreadsheet you saw
The
here.
spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So how does that work? Does this work just from the lift station and the hangars have to get to the lift station?
Well, there's an existing pipe under the Front Range Road, the gravity line that goes all the way to the end. And so most of the private hangars have a stub out that connects to that private line, but it's capped on both ends right now. So what we'll do is we'll take it we'll cut the road, it's our road, but we'll put a piece of pipe into the lift station from that existing pipe. That'll drain the existing hangars, and then we'll lay pipe where the taxi lanes, where the new taxi lane's gonna be to hit the new hangar spots. So
There's
it's
3 manholes in there.
So that's a part of the part of the $200,000 project?
Yeah,
Would be to tie into the last manhole.
yeah. And then, of course, if the private hangars want access, they'd have to pay somebody to come in and hook it up, if they're not already hooked up. I don't know if any of them, are any of them connected to the pipe now? I think they're stubbed out the back of the building, but they're gonna have to ditch witch, a feed line
And connect to our...
and connect to ours.
Yep. Any other questions of John? Comments? Is there a motion to the staff's recommendation to not to exceed $200,000 for the scope of work to design a GA lift station? That's design and construction of $200,000.
I'll make the motion, as you stated it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the staff recommendation to negotiate a scope of work to design and build a GA lift station not to exceed $200,000. Are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Is water and sewer at hangars, is that typical in Bozeman, Billings, all the other airports? Are we the outlier, or are we cutting new ground?
I can't tell you at Bozeman, I would say at Bozeman almost, have to be, because some folks actually have kind of apartments in there, in some of their hangars, I've heard.
Yeah.
Helena certainly has some very nice hangars.
Yeah, most of them, most of the private hangars that you see all over the country, they have a bathroom in them.
Yeah,
Bathroom, shower.
especially if you have a corporate pilot.
Yeah, and if you have a corporate operation where you're, putting the home and equipment airplane that you use type thing.
Porta potty doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, and you got the boss there, and the boss has to go potty, and
Wait, but don't all private planes have bathrooms in them?
No.
Shower in the plane?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the majority of private planes wouldn't have a bathroom. Only the very nice, higher end jets, would have a
Yeah.
bathroom.
But, for the most part, all the hangars, all the corporate hangars and private hangars, in the back there's always a bathroom.
And what really propelled hangar development in Colorado Springs when I was there, we had lots of land for hangar development, but somebody came in and began building condominium hangars. They're all attached, but you could buy your own slot. And the guys started putting bars in them and pool tables, and one guy had a Viking kitchen in there. I mean, it just exploded, the popularity. We thought there'd be a couple rows of them built, and there ended up being dozens of them built. And in a time when GA Aviation was heading in the can, we were seeing tremendous growth in the GA development. And that's what we really want to do here is, if you make it if you have the opportunity to make it a cool environment for people, that you'll be amazed how much demand comes out of the woodwork for hangar space.
And hopefully they'll fly airplanes out of it too.
There's a man cave hangar.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation from staff to negotiate a scope of work to design and build a GA lift station not to exceed $200,000. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, it's unanimous. $200,000 if you have the money at the end of the year.
Yep.
Okay.
The next item is our Red Horse construction project. Several years ago, we started a conversation. Red Horse was looking for some aviation paving training opportunities, and we started a conversation with them about opportunities we had. Down in the GA area, that 20-acre parcel is separated from taxiway A by a couple hundred feet, including a dike wall road that's down through there that'll have to be cut through. The good news is, that the Red Horse guys are gearing up. They'd like to start work early this year with the grader and maybe even be out here in March. They've told us that we're 100% locked now for them to come out, which is pretty exciting. And what we'll have to pay for is we'll need some preliminary engineering on a sample pavement design. We'll need some survey marks as to where to hit taxiway A and where to end up on the other end. A little bit of elevation work, and then they'll come out and do all of the construction work. We'll have to buy the materials, we'll need some gravel, and we'll need some asphalt. So we've got a budget of about $350,000, and what this piece of infrastructure will do is it'll actually go from taxiway A into that vacant parcel, and then down near the Davidson hangar, we'll connect into the existing taxiway in front of the Davidson hangar, so that we have two ways out of Front Range now. Currently, there's only, all of the exit points are at the north end. This will open a new south exit from Front Range, making circulation in that area easier, and then providing a second option for hangar development when you come out. If somebody's coming up the taxi, you can get out of the way. Then we'll build rows of hangars up that taxi lane as it moves up to the east. We'll continue to build rows of hangars up through there. The first phase, which we think will get done with $350,000, will open up somewhere between 8 and 12 hangar pads, depending on how big the hangars are. They build 100-foot hangars, obviously we get less number of them. And so we're really excited about this opportunity because we think it's really going to energize some of the GA community down at that end, create some development interest, and create a really new experience for the private flying community to be able to own a hangar that they can have bathrooms in and have a full service facility.
Any questions with John? We've been talking about this for a while.
Years. The one new addition, which I wrote here in the update, is as CH Jim Hill's been doing the runway design, they did some stormwater calculations. Our current retention capacity isn't large enough to handle this additional pavement, so they are going to grade out a pond area near the new runway 16 end. They'll be out there doing, near 16. They'll be out there doing some grading to create some more retention for us, which is good too, because again, we're only paying for fuel cost.
I do have a question. I think you addressed it though, John. I was thinking of this with the last item too. I can't remember what our plan was if Red Horse wasn't available, but you're saying they're...
It'd be at least a 10-year delay.
Okay, but
yeah.
they're 100%.
They're saying they're 100% now, and they're even, like I said, making provisions to start up in March.
Okay.
They can get into the ground. They'd like to get their graders up here and get working. Yeah, for them, they haven't done airfield paving in a couple of years now, and so they really are very excited about the project because it gets them up here on an airfield working in the environment where they have to work when they're deployed. And so that's for them a great training opportunity. And they're going to be able to use their full crew of, they've got GPS survey equipment, they've got the GPS scrapers, they're going to get training with all of that equipment while they're up here.
Any other questions? Okay, the item on the agenda now and the staff recommendation is to approve up to $350,000 for a project to construct a front range ramp for stormwater retention. And it includes limited design for the water retention, pavement section, costs, quality control, survey, and testing. For Red Horse to do the project, and we've got money in there for the fuel costs. And is there a motion to support this recommendation from staff?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any comments or questions? I guess like I said, we've been talking about this for a long time. The important thing to me is that we have the same quality control that you would on any private sector contractor.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Not that I have any doubt that, it's not going to be a top quality job, but that's important no matter who does the job with the same testing.
Absolutely. We've talked to Sage 2 and they'll be on site. Because we have a big program this summer, we've bought a construction manager for the summer, basically in our project cost for the runway. So they can swing over here and do some quality control at the same time. So we will have an on-site engineer all summer who can help watch over this project.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation of the staff on the taxi lanes. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes
And
unanimously.
this would be our highest priority of all the capital, other than runway capital projects, because we're doing a major asphalt buy. This is mostly asphalt, and we're getting the labor
Yeah,
cheap.
you gotta catch Red Horse.
So we're gonna do it while we can.
We're willing to do it, yeah. Okay, next item on the agenda is 1634.
We've completed the 90% design and done a 90% design review with the FAA on this project, and that's allowed us to update the project costs and have our first real look at what the project budget is. As I said a few minutes ago, the design change in the FAA software that was mentioned in this memo, it appears to have been approved by the FAA. So we believe that will bring our local share down, the unreimbursed portion, or I'm sorry, the authority funds portion should come down by about $300,000. The PFC funding portion will come down some, although I expect not more than $100,000 or so. So we will see some savings in this project, which we'll bring back to the board next month. This is our major grant program for the year. We'll be getting, as you can see, $11 million from the FAA. This project will actually now extend over 2 years as they've gotten into 90% design. There's not enough construction season. If we could get the grant early, there would be, but we don't expect grants to flow until July. That's just been the cycle now, unfortunately, for some 10 or 15 years since there's been budget hiccups in DC.
So it won't be done until...
Yeah, the culmination of it. Because this project, remember we've included the remuneration of runway 16 in here.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll actually be when we're finished runway 1735, which used to be its own project, but because we're putting down paint, we'd have to mill it up again. The FAA agreed to combine them. Because of the scope of the program now, there's just not enough construction season. So this will bleed over into 17. In addition to that, the FAA funding may not be enough to fund the entire project in this construction cycle. So there may be a piece that goes into 17, but with a multi-year program, your chances of being funded from the FAA, you're the highest priority in the entire system. So there's good assurance that we'll see the full 11 million. The FAA is actually signaling they think they'll get more in this year than they have previously thought. So it's possible we might see the entire 11 million this year. But nonetheless, this is a 2-year construction cycle. The piece that we'll do this year is the reconditioning of the runway, rehabilitation of the runway pavements. We'll get the lengthening done. So we'll have a 6,000-foot runway in both directions. We'll keep the 150 feet. We'll reshoot the approaches in March of next year, which allows us to have that 6,000-foot runway with our approaches intact by the time we have to close runway 321 in order to do the 17 piece of this program, which will include the connector taxiway from 321 onto this runway through taxiway C. So everything will get done this year except for the electrical work and the connector to this runway. The only connection that will be available until that connector is built in 17 is the old piece of runway 725, which will be maintained as a taxiway until the 17 program. So you'll have to taxi up runway 725. It'll be redesignated taxiway Z in order that it's no longer an active runway because there is a safety concern with two runways intersecting. So the FAA wants us to redesignate it in the first year of the program. But over the next 2 years, we'll get this $13 million piece of infrastructure built and have a completely new operational crosswind over there, which is with a parallel taxiway, which is a big improvement for us.
So you plan on putting it out for bid
This project will bid in March.
in March?
Is it? Yeah. It's got to be, I believe, on March 15th, we have to be opening bids. Is it correct?
Yeah.
So we'll begin advertising for this project here in the next month.
So do they get to start as early as they can in the construction season, or do they start July 1?
Unfortunately, we won't have funds until July 1. That's one of the things we're looking at, if there's some fungibility where we could front load some of our costs, if the FAA would allow that. Front load some of our costs in the front to get them at least working out there earlier. As we get into the 100% design, that'll be one of the discussions we'll be having.
Your other question?
In the old days, grants flowed in May, the old days, 15 years ago. And it really gave you a much better chance of the northern tier. But like I said, it mainly comes out of spending authorization through Congress. It never gets approved until later in the summer, and so we don't get started until July.
She's gonna make the motion.
Yep.
No, I was gonna make a motion.
No other question?
No.
Okay. Any other questions, John? Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation to proceed with the runway 1634 project. An estimated cost plus contingency not to exceed $13,228,228,168. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Yes, I will second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the staff recommendation, proceed with runway 1634. As stated, is there any further questions or comments? All those in-
$13 million
That's a bunch of money,
is
isn't
a
it?
lot. I think there should be a moment of consideration, just for the fact that it's $13 million.
Yeah, it is well, I mean, it's as close as you can get to building a new runway, really. We're building a new parallel taxiway, all new electrical work, because the electrical work, who was that last worked on, Rod, 20, 30 years?
Oh, yeah, in the 90s.
Yeah, the electrical work's back to the 90s, so all the electrical work's got to be replaced. I mean, it is new signage, and just everything, certainly any systems out there. I mean, the good news is the FAA did approve the transverse grade, so that prevents us from building a crown, which would have, in my opinion, been $1.5 million just wasted. So we did ultimately win that argument, and we're able to keep the transverse grade. So that does save some money.
It is the FAA too, so.
And when we're
There's
done,
the FAA factor in it.
yeah, and when we're done, we're doing what we call a paperwork extension of the runway. When it was cut off of runway 321 several years ago, there was not a lot of attention paid to the approaches, and it was just severed, and the published length was never maximized. So despite the fact we're not adding very much pavement at all here to the ends, we're going to get an additional 700 feet of landing area, which is a huge consideration because it takes us from a portion of the commercial fleet, just the bigger planes being able to land here, to most of the commercial fleet being able to land here on a normal temperature day. So we actually get a tremendous amount out of the program.
I suspect Commissioner Hogan has the same feelings I do, since neither of us come from backgrounds where we work with the FAA. The notion that, multi-year programs or a lock or any of that kind of thing are probably foreign to us for the most part. Makes one a little apprehensive. But still a big ticket, you're right.
The good news is, should anything happen to the second year, the FAA is in a single-year authorization right now, so if for some reason they can't get a second year, we'll still have a working product. In fact, we'll have a complete runway, we'll have a complete taxiway, and actually a longer runway. The connecting won't be that great because you'll be connecting in the middle and then back taxiing one way or the other to get to the end. But it is, we're not leaving a piece of dirt open, to be eroded by rain for 5 years. We'll have a working runway at the end of this year's program.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion of approving staff recommendation as proposed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. It's approved unanimously. I just have one question of you out there. How many, is the general aviation aware that 725 is going away?
Yeah, I do believe, yeah.
We had a number of workshops, it's been probably 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, when the optimization study was done.
And that's when the word first went out, so.
Yeah.
So it'll really kick
I
in.
think guys have talked about those 725s going away anyway,
Yeah.
right, Mike?
Yeah, it's been general knowledge for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I think
It's
the
just-
bit most heartbroken is the guard.
Yeah. Well, reality will kick in when you have that direct wind down,
Oh, yeah.
725, so. Okay. One more, the engineering contract,
This is actually the architectural contract.
architectural.
Yeah, you may remember RS&H was the lead architect that designed the terminal expansion. At the same time that they did the terminal expansion, we did what's known as a baggage inspection program to look at our existing bag screening capability and potentially expand it such that we could have an inline system. And that was driven by the technology that's used down there in the United area right now is hand scrubbing the bag through a scanner. It's highly manually intensive, and those machines have a fairly expensive, they're fairly inexpensive to purchase, but the upkeep of them is fairly expensive to keep them certified. The other two bays back there have a flow-through machine where the whole bag goes through a conveyor, goes into the machine, and they can see the inside the entire bag. The United system requires them to open quite a few more bags. The cost of expanding our bag area and putting in that new system is several $1 million. I believe about $6 million was the last estimate I saw. At the time we were considering it, the FAA was indicating, or the TSA was indicating, they were going to do away with the hand scrubbing system, and we had no way of dealing with the United bags other than literally carting them over the counters to the other counter. Obviously, we don't want that. The lobby is busy enough without people pulling bags across to another airline's bag area. So we put a architectural bid or an architectural plan together to expand the back of the building, put the new conveyor system in, and then connect everything by conveyor. Since then, the TSA has backed off on closing down or taking away that technology. We think we can persist the way we're working for a number of years more, and so we want to keep RS&H under contract in the event that we have to put that project in place. But we have no architectural work in this contract period planned. So we would just have them on retainer if we needed them to move forward with that plan. Their contract expires here shortly, and so we're looking to extend the contract with no work in mind for that 3-year period in order to keep them on retainer.
And this is off of an old one, and there's an error on here. It actually expires then March 1st, 2016, and will go through to 17.
So this agreement would be from when to when?
March 1st, 2016 to 17,
I think we want to do
with
3
two
years.
options.
Oh, with 2 options, yeah. Yeah, a total of 3 years.
Right.
So they're under contract
Right.
till
2 years.
February, the end of
20.
February 16. And this would be for a base year plus 2 more years?
Right.
Any questions of staff concerning their recommendation to extend the lease of R, S, and H engineering?
Is there any cost associated with it?
Not unless we use them. You know, we have no plans to use them. The only reason we want to keep them under contract is we're about a 40% design level. And so if TSA would decide to get rid of those machines, we're going to have to reinvigorate that program. TSA does have some funding for these types of projects. We could probably maybe get 30% funding, but it is an expensive project. My preference would be to push it out 6 years until the debt from the old terminal, 2008 renovation, begins to subside, and then we can dovetail this debt in if we decide to do it and get that piece of the building expanded at that point. You know, ideally, we can last six years with what we're doing and just make it to that point.
Okay, any other questions?
So you'd be looking at extending this again?
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, we have no plans to use them in the foreseeable future. We don't have any terminal, we don't have any architectural work at all.
Is there a motion to approve as recommended by staff? The new lease?
So,
So moved? Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to extend the lease that expires the end of February 2016 for 1 year with 2 extension years. All those,
So John, is there a reason, why would they want to do this?
Well, they want a standard contract. I mean, our other option would be to compete it, and then we'd have to get the files transferred over to a new architect.
Okay.
But given that we don't have any real work, I'm not sure how competitive of a field of solicitors we would have.
Okay, so it's not likely they'll come back and say, we'll do this, but we need some remuneration.
Yeah, no, they called us and said,
Oh, okay.
hey, what would you like to do with that contract? And I said, we really don't have any work, but we'd like to keep you guys involved in the event TSA pulls the plug on the ETD machine. And so, they were agreeable to that, so I asked them to put this together.
Okay.
the downside is they don't have any work anticipated. The upside is if something pops up, they get it. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, passes unanimously. Okay. Are there any comments from board members at this time? Commissioner Holden?
no.
Commissioner Goods, any comments? Commissioner Evans?
John, I was thinking I had read something or heard something since our last meeting about TSA changing scanning requirements. Did I dream that?
You had emailed me on that, or someone emailed me on that. And I did get that question, and I'm not aware of it. The only thing, they're always running what they call plays. So if they're getting intelligence, let's say, young guys traveling with military IDs, might be traveling to places they shouldn't, they'll put that in place, and they'll start doing extra screening on people that meet that demographic. But I'm not aware of anything right now. They're getting ready to roll out the new enhanced driver's licenses in Montana. And they've said that will do something. I'm not sure what something is, but scanning your driver's license or something when this new driver's license comes out. That's as much as I've heard about anything. There is a chance, and I probably put it in the weekly report, that they've bought new body imagers or more body imagers. And so there's a chance that we might get a body imager sometime in the near future. they're beginning to give those to smaller airports again. I think Kalispell's got one now, or one coming. And so we've been told that we might be in line for one. We're already wired for it. It'd be great to get that in there. It would speed up the people with prosthetics, and other needs in the checkpoint. So we're hoping, I just asked them 2 weeks ago, where are we with that?
I'd love that.
Aren't body imagers a net negative for efficiency? I mean, it takes a lot longer to get through a body imager than it does a metal detector.
I agree, but remember, we're down to one metal detector.
Yeah.
So, if anything happens with that metal detector, we're going to be down to hand wanding, because they took one away 2 years ago. And so the body imager, what they would do with that most likely is they would run 2 lines, and the body imager would be primary. If things begin to get backed up, they would shift over and run both a metal detector and a body imager. And then if you're pre-selected, they would probably run you through the metal detector only. So, it gives them another whole lane, really, of screening. There was some perceptions early on that technology was bad, when there was the issue of what people can see. Of course, that's been rectified. They see a stick figure unless you have something, and then they see that area blown up. So I think most of those issues have kind of gone away. The metal detectors, you're still getting hit with magnetic radiation, even though it's not, X-ray radiation. They've said that it's probably the body imagers are probably just as good for you as the magnetometer is.
They might be slower for the average
It is.
passenger, but they're a lot faster for those of us that have implants. Otherwise, you get pulled aside and wandered, and it really slows things down.
And that's where TSA has always argued it's the same or faster and net. I find it hard to believe, but you got a lot of people that belt, they go through and the belt dings on them, and so they're taking that off the magnetometer. Of course, your belt doesn't necessarily have to come off if you're going through the imager. So maybe overall it's comparable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other further comments? I have no comments. Is there any comments from the public at this time? Okay, with no further business to come before the board, I declare the meeting adjourned, and we'll just take a quick break to 20 after, and we'll come back and do the work session, which shouldn't take very long. Thank you for your time.
Go see the link first.
No, just grab one of those tickets underneath.
Put the camera there.
If him abstaining took needed 3 for a vote to pass, if we didn't have 3 votes, then it couldn't count. So we still, you got your
Well, if somebody
quorum.
voted no.
You have your quorum, you have your majority, took 3 with what this quorum is. You still have 3 with him and
Yeah,
so say we're 2 that
All right, sounds good.
Then you can vote.
Yeah.
Well, not on that. Oh, I'm just talking about his check.
You get a good picture of it?
So it works fine, because I still had 3 votes.
They did a couple
saying
inside,
yes, but let's say
kind of
you
windows
vote
in the
yes,
background,
then we
and
couldn't
tried
do
to
it.
get
Right,
that
you can't
rusted
get
sign
that.
up there. And then they did a couple of top end escalator with the 2 gates. So hopefully those will turn out.
No, you-
I'm sure they will. Not I'm sure when I do it.
We'll probably go cheaper that way. But the FAA has a requirement they want somebody jumps up a couple months. So we'll probably run the selection, and that's probably should publish by April. So I'll see May, June, July, August. We'll probably try to run late fall next year. Well, this year.
Fall of 16.
Yeah. First step, and then the design will start at 17 for 18.
And then 17 and then into 18.
Yeah.
Fall of 16.
Fall of 16 for 17 design, 18 construction. But, with this program, it's, we have nothing in 17.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, the first thing they told me was,
no work.
first thing they told me was, oh, no, we want you to do this election in 17. And I said, oh, you're just cheating somebody a whole year. And I asked, can I do a 6-year contract? You're not allowed to do that. It just makes sense. And then I said, okay.
You got a GA airport that's got 2 years worth of work.
Isn't that
And it's the
crazy?
same thing, it's like, well, why do we even want to kick this off until the year before when you're gonna have money? To do something?
And it doesn't make sense for us to have 2 engineering contracts. Because that was the other thing I said too, is, there might be some drop. A little bit of drop.
That would have been a good
I
out.
know, you see what I'm saying? It would have been.
But, it's not gonna be-
You gotta talk to that.
Yeah.
Tom.
Yeah, I gotta tell that.
I just, it's so frustrating, because you never hear about this, you show up in Helen and all of a sudden they say, oh, well, here's what we want you to do, you're going out the master plan the street for a few months. But what if my contract's expiring and I'm in the middle of the master plan? How does that make any sense?
Contracts where we were under,
Master plans, yeah.
now they're saying, oh, you can't
Can't
do
do
that,
that.
and they're taking it right out of our contracts. It's
Yeah.
just like, well, legally, we're